everyone. This is the HOPEcast from Hope Church RVA. I am Rachel Dawson, and I am part of the communications team here at Hope, and I am joined today by our Connections pastor, Dan Yoon.
Hey, folks.
We are here to have a conversation about common questions in life and faith in under 30 minutes, and today's question is, what is the value of journaling? So I personally am really excited about this question because I love to journal. I have quite a few, and they're just like one of my favorite things. And I think what's really important to me about journals, and I've been this way since I was a kid. I've just written everything down. I have so many journals from my life. And when I read back through them or flip through the pages, I see things and remember things that I would have completely forgotten about had I not written it down.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's so important that I journal, that I write it down, that I keep a record of what's happened in my life, of what God has been doing in my life, what prayers have been answered, what prayers I've been asking. And I just would forget it all if I didn't write it down. So my journals are like the thing I would save if I needed to grab one item.
Right.
What about you, Dan? Do you have a journal? Is journaling important to you?
Yeah. Fun topic. Journaling didn't really become a thing for me until about grad school. And I started grad school in my mid to late 20s. And there was a guest speaker that came to a chapel one week, and he was also a creative. So he was a writer, a producer, a musician. And he said this one thing during his talk with us. He said, remember God and write every day down. In fact, that phrase, write every day down, I think is the name of one of his songs. And this dude just went on for a few minutes about the importance of jotting things down, like you said, to remember things that God in particular has done. So there, I believe, are a lot of different uses and benefits of journaling. It helps you process things. It gives you time to just pause and reflect. But for me, as a person of faith, I've really been able to, like you said, track down prayers and eventually see how God has responded to those prayers. And so, yeah, I'd say starting in my late 20s, I've been journaling, probably less so in the last year, just because of the commotion of life. But man, I've got a stack of journals that I have both in my office here at work as well as at home. And just like you, I've had this thought, shoot, if our house burned down, God forbid, what would I take? And I would probably look for my journals as one of those key things. So knowing that journaling is a big thing for you, and you mentioned that you've got journals, like plural, and I'm wondering if that means that's a result of the accumulation over the years of journals, or if you have a number of different journals that you keep up to date concurrently at the same time.
Yes, both. I both have a lot of them in terms of volume from over the years, and also really there are three that I keep at the same time. And so one is really kind of my catchall journal. It's the one I've got in front of me right now. And it really is the place where I kind of tee up my month. I kind of dabble in bullet journaling, and I'll create kind of things I want to set for the month and goals for the month and some kind of habit tracker types of things. Because for me, it's really helpful to see kind of the little things adding up over time. Like I said, I wouldn't know what I had accomplished necessarily if I didn't write it all down. I track the books I read. I track I write my notes from my Bible study. I do my sermon notes in my journal as I'm, sitting in church on Sundays. I'll write down quotes from books I'm reading. It's kind of really the place where everything just kind of lives. And it's truly the narrative of my life in paper, really. And some days it's really random. Some days it's really beautiful. Some days it's just word vomit, prayer. As I'm kind of flipping through, I'm like, oh yeah, I did this GLAD acronym for a while where I wrote down gratitude and things I was learning, accomplishments and delight. And I did that for a season. Current events, I would kind of just jot down as a way to, again, remember when things happened. So that's really kind of the main journal, I would say. It's the one that's with me everywhere I go.
Just real quick, because folks listening can't see what I'm seeing. And everyone, I am watching Rachel flip through her journal, and it looks like a work of art. Every page almost looks different from one to the next. There are colors. There's beautiful pictures. That is not how I journal. So maybe one takeaway is that none of us have to journal the same way. But wow, I'm just really impressed that your journaling abilities like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really neat.
It's been a fun aspect of social media for me, is connecting with people who also journal, especially kind of bullet journaling. It's a more artistic kind of way to journal and to record things in life. And it's one of those things where you see other people do it and you kind of, you find inspiration from it and start to, I have journaled more lists and gone in a more kind of creative, artistic approach with some pages because I've seen other people do that.
Yeah.
So it's fun to feel freedom to try new things in a space of journaling and just write down the things I think I'm going to want to remember. I think a lot about being, 80 years old or having just the end of my life at some point, having all of these journals as this kind of gift to the people that come after me, as this kind of I would love to just think that it would be my legacy, right?
Yeah.
Of like, here's the literal proof of the life I lived and what God did. And it just feels cool to me that I would like have this record.
Yeah. I've even had the thought when our first daughter was born, Ellie, I actually wrote an entire page to her in the middle of one of my journals with that same thought in mind, that one day I will no longer walk this earth.
Yep.
And hopefully a gift, hopefully a gift and not like a nuisance, would be to hand off these journals. And my journals are pretty like authentic to my experience.
Yep.
In other words, I'm not writing my journals as if I'm writing it to Ellie or whoever. But they, I hope, would get a sense of the journey, the experiences that I've had. Again, the prayers that were prayed, ultimately prayers that God responded to in faithfulness. But yeah, the sense of handing things down, things that were meaningful, things that were significant, things that were hard. As humans, I think there's an opportunity to both remember and have other people remember with you long after something has actually passed.
Yeah, I love that. I think so. One of my other journals, like I said, I have three. This kind of catch-all one. One of my other ones is really my book journal that I just record all my things I'm reading. And again, because I do read a lot, and I would forget a lot about the books that I read if I didn't write down my reviews, my thoughts, the kind of key plot points or whatever. But the third one is a journal where I keep collages from the newspaper every week. And to your point too, I think looking back at life and looking back at kind of the moments from our society and our world that have been important, whether they've been obviously challenging and painful like a lot of this last year has been, or just kind of encouraging or interesting stories of humanity and hope. It's another really cool record for me to look back on and see this was life. This was the world we lived in. This was, I started it in 2020, which is a year to look back on, and so much of it's a blur. And I'm grateful to have things written down and things, collaged on paper where I can look back and see the progress that we've made, see the places where there's still a lot that hasn't changed, to see opportunities for kind of more growth and more kind of pressing into, leaning into things. Like you said, with prayer too, to look back at times where I wrote things down and even later completely forgot that I had been thinking about it or praying about it in that way, and to see, oh, wow, actually that's changed, or man, that, I was having this struggle or this thing was really hard in this season, and it's, 6 months later and I'm flipping through and realizing, wait, that thing got better. And I didn't notice in the day to day as I was living it, but I can look back and see, wow, God was actually answering that prayer I had forgotten I even prayed. I can see God's faithfulness through it. And that's really encouraging to me as a believer when the world gets hard and heavy and I can struggle to wonder, is anything happening? Is there any progress being made?
Yeah. I think even as you're sharing, how often in scripture we see the people of God being called to the act of remembering, because we are prone to forget. Some of us have better memories than others, but I would dare say that no matter who you are, you can't retain everything. Our daughter, Ellie, again, our family moved to a new house just this past weekend. And she said this phrase that made me laugh. She was laying in bed, and this was the first night in our new house. And she said, "Daddy, I'm going to erase all the memories from our old house so that I have enough room to have new memories for our new house." And I'm like, baby girl, you don't need to erase your memories. In fact, I don't know how you would even do that, but you can have old memories and make new ones. And she said, "No, I want to get rid of all of my memories so I can have new ones." So anyway, this idea of whether by choice or just because of time or whatever, we're prone to forget. And there are just some things that happen in life, the good, the not so great, the highs and the lows, no matter what, that I think they're so meaningful that it would be worth us treasuring for a longer period of time through an act of remembrance, aka journaling. One question for you is, did you just like say, you know what, today I'm going to start journaling, and boom, like you had a rhythm, you had the know-how, like it was really easy for you? Or is this something that it took some time to develop? Has it evolved? Like, what's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, I think I've, in some ways, always been a journaler, a writer. Some of my earliest memories are of like creating stories and writing it all down. And I would build these elaborate families and write books about them and have all of it written down. And I found old journals from when I was a kid, probably 7, 8, 9, where I was writing prayers, and it's like, "Dear Alpha and Omega, like it's me, Rachel." Like there's this like, you could totally see my like young, like earnest heart trying to figure out like how to be like a Christian and like spiritual and like pray to God in some way. And it's really very dear to look back on. So I don't know. It's always been a part of me. I think it's been sporadic and it's increased over time. I think I moved during high school across the country and had a really hard couple of years. And I found that journaling was an outlet that was needed for me when I didn't really feel like I had anybody I could really talk to about things that were going on. And I didn't really have much of a space to process. Paper and my journal kind of felt like the space for that.
Yeah.
And then, I went to college, and the ministry I was a part of, a lot of people journaled, and it's kind of, I don't know whether it was just kind of for show of like, oh, look, we're like good Christians because we take notes in our Bible study or whatever. That was kind of around me, and it encouraged me to do more with it and be more intentional with it. But it is something that has taken time to kind of develop the muscle of. You can flip through my journal and you'll see weeks where there's nothing and I don't say a word and don't write anything down. And I'm looking back, I'm always annoyed at that. 'Cause I'm like, man, stuff happened and I just, again, forgot. I have no idea what happened those few weeks. I didn't write it down. But I do have to actively work to write, to process on paper, to do that. My counselor, who I meet with really frequently, always is encouraging me to write. And it's kind of, for me, a sign of when I'm not writing. I'm not usually in a great headspace. So it's a good kind of marker for me of knowing that it's a good and healthy practice for me and I am better when I do it is helpful. And I have people that kind of help encourage and motivate me in that. But it isn't always my favorite thing to do, because I think as I write, there's a Flannery O'Connor quote. She's an author that I love. She says, "I don't know what I think until I read what I write." And it's really meaningful to me that I find that to be true too, that I sometimes don't know what I'm feeling and it feels like this like jumbled ball of yarn in my brain. But when I start to write it out and I read it back, I realize what I was actually thinking or feeling, but I didn't know it until I started writing it.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. If we took more time, we could probably define the benefits, right? Like the value of journaling. And then you pair that with the reality that for a lot of people, it just doesn't come naturally. It takes a little bit of developing. You got to develop some muscles around it. But I would be one just to encourage people to try journaling, especially if you've never done it before, or maybe you're someone that's like, you know what, I've tried that, didn't work out. I might just encourage you to try it again. And it could literally be taking out a piece of paper and every day, at some point, just writing down one word or one sentence that encapsulates what your experience has been in that period of time. And if that's too frequent, then hey, once a week, right? Whatever it is. And it would really, I think, be of benefit to you in how you process, in how you reflect, in how you're able to remember things and say, oh, even in terms of a sense of accomplishment, you're making progress. Because I think as humans, at least for me, one thing that brings an area of frustration is when I feel like I'm always stuck. But to your point, like writing things down, seeing that over the course of time, there has been movement, or more specifically growth, that's super encouraging. I am not the same person I am today than I was X amount of period in the past.
Yep.
So just one way to plug in, hey, give it a shot. Journaling could be for you.
Yeah. And there's really great journals that exist now there's kind of a 5-year journal where it just has lines for you to write, like you said, a sentence every day. But there's the the page is for May 24th and there's 5 sections. So you write it in 2021 and the next year you would come back around in 2022, you'd write your next sentence. So I have one of those and I just will write a thing that happened that day. And it's fun to look back on and start to see the years piling up. So even, find a journal that just asks you or, gives you space for 1 line a day that exists. Or maybe it's even, I do a rhythm every year on my birthday and of writing down things I want to remember from that last year of my life. And I usually do the number of what age I was, which is kind of funny because the older I get, the more I'll have to remember when it will likely be more challenging to remember. But this past year, looking at my list of, 28 things to remember about being 28, I went back through my photos for ideas to remember things. I looked back through my calendar. I used other tools to help me remember because it's a whole year to reflect on. That was a lot. But even just a once a year rhythm of looking back at, what happened this year? What friends did I make? What things happened in the world? Did my career change at all? Did I move? What were some meaningful moments, trips, etc.? It's really great to have that on paper. So maybe you do a once a year rhythm or it's a once a week thing. On a certain day, you just pull the journal back out and maybe it's a gratitude journal and you do a couple things every day that you're grateful for. There's good. So much science about how that helps our brains be healthier. So yeah, it doesn't have to be something, you don't have to be artistic. Your handwriting doesn't have to be legible. Nobody ever has to see it. It can truly just be for yourself. But I agree and would echo the encouragement to just try writing things down. Maybe you want to write down a prayer, or you want to write down the best thing about your day and the worst thing about your day. Or like you said, writing a letter to your daughter. Maybe it's something, my mom did that every year on my birthday from my very first birthday, wrote me a letter. And when I was 18, she handed me this whole bundle of letters she had written me. And it was a beautiful gift. And like we talked about with the legacy and the way that it helps us remember and for her to look back on and remember things about my life, it was really sweet. So there's so much goodness that comes from writing it down and having it to hold is really meaningful and special.
I'm even wondering for those that have been in the practice of journaling, maybe today's a good time to whip out a few old ones.
Yeah.
Right? And to walk down memory lane. Take a trip without leaving your house or wherever you happen to be. And read some entries that date back further than a year. And the further back, the better maybe, right?
Yeah.
And just hopefully that would stir in you a sense of gratitude. But if you find yourself in a state, because there have been prayers, man, that I've prayed that I feel like have been left unanswered, at least from my perspective, maybe it's just another opportunity for you to continue in prayer, right? So whether it's a moment of gratitude, reflection, or even persevering in a place of prayer, maybe this is a good time to visit some of those old entries.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I need to find the box where all of mine are stored and pull out some oldies.
Yeah, we just moved. I hope I didn't lose mine.
Awesome. Well, we are so glad that you have listened with us today. We invite you to subscribe to the HOPEcast in your favorite podcast app and share this episode with a friend, maybe someone you know who journals or somebody who's talked to you about journaling, and they might find this encouraging and helpful. And we would love if you've got a journal and you want to post some pictures or share anything with us, you can do that on social media and tag us. We are Hope Church RVA in all of the places. And you can learn more about Hope, who we are, and what we're doing on our website, which is hopechurchrva.com. And we invite you to listen into the next one.
Bye.
See ya.